Captain Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time, before stepping through the massive crystal doors. The throne room of Zephyria Prime stretched before him like something from a dream. Towering pillars of pure crystal caught and reflected light in impossible ways, creating rainbows that danced across walls made of living stone. The ceiling disappeared into darkness so far above that even the advanced sensors in his uniform could not detect where it ended. But it was not the architecture that made Marcus pause. It was the silence. Nearly 200 alien dignitaries filled the vast space, representatives from dozens of species across the galaxy. There were the tall, insect-like Vorthak with their clicking mandibles. The floating gas beings from the Nebula Collective hovered in their containment suits. Even the proud warrior clans of Karis had sent their finest generals. Yet despite their number, the throne room felt empty. Every single alien stood with their heads bowed, their eyes fixed firmly on the polished floor. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from a single massive diamond, sat Princess Lyrelai of the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus had studied her species during the long journey to their homeworld, but seeing her in person was something entirely different. Her skin seemed to be made of living light, translucent and beautiful, with patterns of bioluminescence flowing beneath the surface, like rivers of starlight. Her hair moved as if underwater, each strand catching and bending light in ways that human physics could not explain. When she spoke, her voice did not come through the air but directly into the minds of everyone present. "Welcome, beings of the galaxy." Her telepathic voice resonated in every consciousness in the room. "You come to witness the first meeting between the Zephyrian Empire and the species known as humans." The patterns of light under her skin shifted as she spoke, becoming brighter, more complex. Marcus noticed how every alien in the room seemed to shrink away from that light. The Vorthak's clicking grew quieter. The Karis warriors, famous throughout the galaxy for their courage, trembled where they stood. Even the machine beings of the Synthetic Collective, who felt no emotions, had dimmed their optical sensors to avoid looking directly at the princess. But Marcus found himself leaning forward, genuinely fascinated. The bioluminescent patterns were incredible. They seemed to respond to her thoughts, her emotions, creating a living display more beautiful than any art he had ever seen. The way the light played across her features reminded him of Aurora dancing across Earth's polar skies. Without thinking, he began to study the patterns, trying to understand their meaning. The princess continued her formal address, speaking of trade agreements and mutual cooperation. But Marcus was not listening to her words. He was watching the subtle changes in her luminescence, the way certain colors appeared when she mentioned specific topics. It was like watching a new language being written in light itself. Then their eyes met. Princess Lyrelai stopped speaking mid-sentence. For the first time in over 300 years of life, someone was looking directly at her, not glancing quickly and then away, not stealing fearful glimpses from the corner of their vision, but actually looking at her with open, curious eyes. The bioluminescent patterns under her skin flickered, changed, became something that none of her advisors had ever seen before. Confusion mixed with surprise, creating colors that had no names in any Zephyrian text. "Why are you looking at me so deeply, human?" she asked, her telepathic voice carrying a note of genuine bewilderment that reached every mind in the throne room. A ripple of shock ran through the assembled dignitaries. Several of the Vorthak made high-pitched clicking sounds that Marcus recognized as distress calls. The Karis generals took involuntary steps backward. Even the gas beings in their containment suits began to glow with what could only be described as panic. Marcus tilted his head slightly, still studying the princess with the same curiosity he might show when examining an interesting star formation or a new type of crystal. He had not meant to cause offense. In human culture, looking someone in the eyes was a sign of respect and attention. He was simply doing what came naturally. "I apologize if I have broken some protocol," Marcus said aloud, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Unlike the telepathic communication that everyone else used in the princess's presence, his words were formed by vibrating air, primitive and physical. "Your bioluminescent displays are fascinating. I was trying to understand their patterns." The throne room fell into absolute silence. Not even the constant background humming of the life support systems could be heard. Every alien in the room understood what they were witnessing. This human was not just failing to show proper submission to Princess Lyrelai, he was actively studying her as if she were an interesting specimen rather than one of the most powerful telepathic beings in the galaxy. Princess Lyrelai's advisor, a tall, thin Zephyrian named Kethavar, stepped forward. His own bioluminescent patterns pulsed with urgent warning signals. "Your radiance," he said telepathically, though his mental voice was tight with barely controlled fear. "Perhaps the human does not understand our customs. The penalty for such disrespect is traditionally silence," the princess commanded, though her mental voice was soft, almost wondering. She rose from her throne and every alien in the room took another step backward. As she moved, the light patterns under her skin intensified, becoming brighter, more complex. The crystal walls began to resonate with her power, filling the air with a low musical humming. Lesser beings throughout the galaxy had fallen unconscious from far less display of Zephyrian might. Marcus remained exactly where he stood, though he did pull out a small device from his pocket and began taking readings. "Remarkable," he murmured, to himself, not even aware that his voice was carrying through the chamber. "The electromagnetic output is off the charts, and those frequency modulations, it's almost like your entire body is a living transmitter." Princess Lyrelai stopped, walking. In her centuries of existence, she had never encountered a being who responded to her presence with scientific curiosity instead of terror or reverence. The Zephyrian people had evolved their psychic abilities as a defense mechanism, developing overwhelming mental dominance to protect themselves from a hostile galaxy. Every species they had ever encountered had the same reaction: immediate submission to their superior psychic power. But this human was not submitting. He was not even afraid. He was taking notes. She focused her attention on Marcus's mind, trying to sense his thoughts and emotions as she could with any other being. What she found confused her even more. His brain patterns showed fascination, wonder, genuine scientific interest. There was no fear, no desire to bow down or run away. His heart rate was elevated, but not from terror. It was the elevated heart rate of someone encountering something amazing. "You are not afraid," she said, and this time her telepathic voice was directed only at Marcus. "Should I be?" he asked in return, looking up from his scanner to meet her eyes again. "You seem to be in perfect control of your abilities, and that light display is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen." The patterns under Princess Lyrelai's skin shifted again, this time taking on hues that her own people had not witnessed for millennia. Colors that spoke of wonder, of curiosity returned, of a loneliness so deep that it had almost been forgotten. Around them, the assembled dignitaries continued to tremble and whisper among themselves, but neither the princess nor Marcus paid them any attention. For the first time in her very long life, Princess Lyrelai found herself genuinely curious about another being. Not as a subject to be dominated or a threat to be neutralized, but as an individual who might actually be worth knowing. She made a decision that shocked every Zephyrian in the room. "Clear the throne room," she commanded. "I wish to speak with the human alone." The evacuation happened quickly, with aliens practically fleeing through the crystal doors. Only Kethavar dared to hesitate. "Your radiance. Is this wise? We know nothing about this species' true capabilities. They interest me," Princess Lyrelai said simply, her bioluminescent patterns now displaying colors that had not been seen since before the Great War that had changed her people forever. "Leave us." As the massive doors sealed shut behind the last departing dignitary, Marcus found himself alone in the crystal throne room with the most powerful telepath in the known galaxy. And for the first time in over 3 centuries, Princess Lyrelai was looking forward to a conversation. Marcus sat on the edge of the crystalline bed in his assigned quarters, turning the necklace over in his hands. The pendant had stopped glowing the moment the guards had escorted him away from Princess Zarathis, but he could still feel something stirring within it. Every few minutes he would touch it again, and the crystal would respond with a soft pulse of light that seemed to match his emotions. When he felt curious, it glowed steady and blue. When frustration crept in, it flickered with orange sparks. The quarters they had given him were luxurious by any standard, with walls that seemed to grow from living crystal and furniture that adjusted to his body automatically. But Marcus knew a prison when he saw one, no matter how beautiful the bars. The door had no visible lock or handle from the inside, and when he approached it, nothing happened. He was trapped, and Ambassador Williams was nowhere to be seen. Hours passed before anything changed. Marcus had been experimenting with the necklace, discovering that different thoughts and feelings caused different colors and patterns in the crystal, when he heard a soft chiming sound. A section of the wall simply melted away, revealing Princess Zarathis standing in what appeared to be a hidden passage. "Captain Chen," she said quietly, glancing around as if checking for observers. "I apologize for the delay. The palace has been in chaos since your demonstration with the pendant." "Demonstration?" Marcus stood, slipping the necklace over his head. "I didn't demonstrate anything, I just touched it and it lit up." "That is exactly the problem," she said, stepping into the room. The wall sealed itself behind her with barely a whisper. "Do you understand what you have done? What that pendant is?" Marcus shook his head and she moved closer, her silver and blue patterns swirling with what he was beginning to recognize as excitement mixed with concern. "It is a soul resonator," she explained. "One of the artifacts left behind by the predecessors, the ancient race that ruled this galaxy before my people, before any of the current civilizations. For 10,000 years my family has guarded that pendant, waiting for someone who could awaken it." "The predecessors," Marcus repeated. "Your mother mentioned ruins, but I thought they were just another extinct civilization." Princess Zarathis shook her head firmly. "Not extinct. Evolved. Transcended. They left behind technology so advanced that even we can barely understand fragments of it. But more importantly, they left behind tests, challenges for those who would come after them." She moved to one of the crystal formations near the wall and touched it gently. The formation responded by displaying what looked like a three-dimensional star map, showing hundreds of systems connected by flowing lines of light. "This is the predecessor network," she said. "Hidden bases, research stations, and archives scattered throughout the galaxy. Most are sealed, waiting for the right key to unlock them. We have found dozens over the centuries, but none of us can activate them. The technology responds only to what the predecessors called the inheritors. And you think humans are these inheritors?" "I think you might be." She turned back to him and her expression was intense. "Tell me, what did you feel when the pendant activated?" Marcus considered the question carefully. It was like something waking up inside me. Not just in the necklace, but in me too. Like I was remembering something I had forgotten. She nodded, as if this confirmed something important. "The predecessors were not like us, Captain. They did not build their civilization on hierarchy and rigid structure. Their records suggest they valued adaptation, creativity, the ability to change and grow. Qualities that my people have lost over our long history." Marcus walked over to examine the star map more closely. As he approached, several of the systems began to pulse with brighter light, and new connections appeared between previously unlinked points. Princess Zarathis gasped. "The map is responding to you," she breathed. "It has never done that for any Vaelthari." "What does it mean?" "It means you can access predecessor facilities that have been sealed for millennia." She touched. Another section of the wall and the star map was replaced by images that made Marcus's heart race. Ships that looked like they were made of liquid metal, weapons that bent space itself, cities that floated between dimensions. "This is why my mother ended the audience so abruptly," Princess Zarathis continued. "The Empress has spent her entire reign searching for ways to unlock predecessor technology. The power contained in their archives could make the Vaelthari Empire the undisputed rulers of this galaxy. But if humans are the true inheritors, we become a threat to her plans," Marcus finished. "That's why I'm being kept isolated." "It is worse than that." The princess moved closer, lowering her voice even though they were alone. The High Council is meeting now to decide your fate. Many believe you should be studied, dissected to learn the source of your abilities. Others want to eliminate Earth before humanity can spread throughout the galaxy and claim what the Empress sees as rightfully ours. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the crystal walls around him. How long do we have? Hours? Perhaps less. But there may be another way. She hesitated as if weighing a dangerous decision. There are others among my people who believe the Empress is wrong about the predecessors. A group called the Truth Seekers, led by my former teacher Kethanaros. They have been studying forbidden texts and hidden archives for decades. Forbidden. How? The official Vilthari interpretation of predecessor history claims they chose us as their successors before they transcended. But Kethanaros has found evidence that contradicts this. He believes the predecessors intended for multiple species to inherit their knowledge, working together rather than competing for dominance. Marcus touched the necklace again, and it pulsed warmly against his chest. Where are these truth seekers, hidden in the deep caverns beneath the city? The Empress considers them dangerous heretics, but they may be your only hope of getting off this world alive. She moved back toward the hidden passage. I can take you to them. But once we leave this room, there is no going back. You will be marked as a fugitive, and I will be guilty of treason. Why would you risk that for someone you barely know? Princess Zarathis paused at the wall, her patterns shifting to deeper blues and purples. Because I have spent my entire life watching my people grow more rigid, more fearful of change. We have become so obsessed with maintaining our position as the galaxy's dominant civilization that we have forgotten how to grow, how to learn. If you truly are one of the inheritors, then perhaps there is still hope for something better. Marcus made his decision quickly. Let's go. The hidden passage was a network of tunnels that ran throughout the palace, apparently unknown to most of the inhabitants. Princess Zarathis led him through a maze of crystal corridors that descended deep into the planet's crust. As they moved deeper, Marcus noticed that the walls began to show different patterns, older geometries that didn't match the Vilthari architecture above. These tunnels are predecessor work, she explained when he commented on the change. The Vilthari built their city on top of ancient ruins, but most of the original structures remain intact below ground. They had been walking for nearly an hour when Marcus felt the necklace grow warm against his chest. Ahead of them, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern filled with structures that took his breath away. Crystalline spires twisted upward like frozen. Lightning and floating platforms drifted through the air without any visible support. But more impressive than the architecture was what happened when Marcus entered the cavern. Lights began flickering to life throughout the space. Consoles that had been dark for millennia suddenly displayed scrolling text in languages Marcus couldn't read. The floating platforms adjusted their positions, creating clear pathways through the cavern. It was as if the entire facility was waking up after a long sleep. Impossible, whispered a voice from the shadows. An elderly Vilthari emerged from behind one of the spires, his skin showing the deep gold and green patterns of extreme age. Princess Zarathis, what have you brought to our sanctuary? Master Kethanaros, she said formally. This is Captain Marcus Chen of Earth. I believe he may be what we have been searching for. The old scholar approached Marcus slowly, his ancient eyes taking in every detail of the awakening facility around them. When his gaze fell on the glowing necklace, his patterns shifted to bright silver with excitement. A soul resonator, activated. After all these centuries, he breathed. And the facility responds to his presence. Princess, do you understand what this means? That the predecessors chose humans as their inheritors? More than that. Kethanaros moved to one of the newly activated consoles, reading the scrolling text with growing excitement. If this human can interface with predecessor technology, then everything the Empress believes about our destiny is wrong. We are not the chosen successors. We never were. Marcus felt the weight of their stares and the implications of what was happening around him. What does this mean for Earth? Kethanaros looked up from the console, his expression grave. It Means, young human, that your species is about to become the target of the largest military force this galaxy has seen in 1,000 years. The Empress will not allow potential rivals to exist. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding through. The sound of military aircraft grew louder above the cavern as Marcus stood before the activated predecessor console. The ancient text scrolled across the crystalline display, and somehow, impossibly, he was beginning to understand parts of it. The necklace pulsed against his chest, each beat seeming to unlock more of the mysterious language in his mind. "Captain Chen," Cathanaros called urgently, "if you truly can interface with their systems, we need defensive measures now. The Empress has sent her elite guard, and they will not hesitate to collapse this entire cavern to prevent predecessor technology from falling into the wrong hands." Marcus placed his palm against the console's surface. The moment his skin made contact, information flooded his consciousness. He saw the history of the facility, built by the predecessors as one of hundreds of hidden research stations throughout the galaxy. But more than that, he felt their purpose, their hopes for the species that would come after them. The predecessors had not simply vanished. They had evolved beyond physical form, ascending to a higher plane of existence. But before their transformation, they had prepared tests and tools for those who would inherit their knowledge. Not a single species, but many working together, each contributing their unique strengths to a greater whole. "I can see it," Marcus O. said, his voice filled with wonder. The predecessors never intended for one species to dominate the others. They wanted cooperation, diversity of thought and approach. The Valthari were meant to contribute their organizational skills and long perspective, but not to rule alone. "Heresy," whispered one of the truth-seekers who had emerged from deeper in the cavern, but her tone carried excitement rather than condemnation. The facility continued to respond to Marcus's presence. Ancient defensive systems came online, creating an energy barrier that would protect them from immediate attack. But even as the shield formed around the cavern, Marcus could see from the tactical displays that it was only a temporary measure. The Empress had brought enough firepower to level half the continent if necessary. "There are others," Princess Zarathis said, reading from another console that had activated nearby. "Other facilities like this one scattered across dozens of worlds, and something else. A central archive, a place where the predecessors stored their most important knowledge." Cathanaros moved beside her, his aged eyes bright with scholarly excitement. "The Crown Archive. We had theorized about its existence for decades but could never locate it. If it truly exists, it would contain the complete history of their civilization, their technology, their wisdom about how species should work together." Marcus felt a pull from the necklace, as if it was trying to guide his attention to something specific. He followed the sensation to a large console in the center of the cavern. When he approached it, a three-dimensional star map appeared in the air above, showing the entire galaxy. Hundreds of points of light marked predecessor facilities, but one location pulsed with special significance. "That's it," he said with certainty. "The Crown Archive. It's in the Andromeda Reach, in a system that doesn't appear on any current stellar charts. The Reach is 3 months' travel from here," Princess Zarathis said, "and it's heavily patrolled by Imperial forces. Even if we could escape this planet, we would never make it there undetected." "We don't need to travel there ourselves," Marcus said, understanding blooming in his mind as more predecessor knowledge became accessible. "At least not yet. First, we need to wake up the network." He turned back to the central console and placed both hands on its surface. The necklace blazed with light, and suddenly Marcus felt connected not just to this facility, but to every other predecessor installation across the galaxy. Most were still dormant, waiting for the right activation sequence. But some had been partially awakened over the centuries by various species who had stumbled across them. "I can send a message," he said, "through the quantum communication network the predecessors built. If there are others out there who can interface with their technology, they'll receive it." "Others?" Cathanaros asked. "Humans on Earth, members of other species who have the right genetic markers and mental flexibility. The predecessors designed their tests to identify individuals from any race who could work with their systems. Marcus began inputting commands into the console, guided by instincts he didn't fully understand. But I need to warn Earth first. Your Empress is planning to attack my homeworld. The quantum transmitter came online with a sound like singing crystal. Marcus composed his message carefully, knowing it might be the only warning Earth would receive. He encoded everything he had learned about the Velthari military capabilities, the existence of predecessor technology, and most importantly, the fact that humans could activate ancient systems that had remained dormant for millennia. As the message transmitted, alarms throughout the facility grew more urgent. The defensive barrier was holding, but massive amounts of energy were being directed against it from above. Through the facility's sensors, Marcus could see Imperial war machines positioning themselves around the cavern entrance, their weapons charging for what would likely be a devastating final assault. "Princess," one of the truth seekers called out. "The Empress herself is approaching. She's demanding that you surrender the human immediately, or she will order the complete destruction of this sector." Princess Zarathis looked torn between her loyalty to her people and her growing understanding of what Marcus represented. Her skin patterns shifted through rapid cycles of color, betraying her inner conflict. "She's my mother," she said quietly. "Despite everything, she believes she's protecting our civilization from a threat she doesn't understand." "Then help her understand," Marcus said. "The predecessors didn't leave their technology for any single species to hoard. It was meant to be shared, to help all civilizations grow and prosper together." Before she could respond, the cavern filled with a new sound, a deep harmonic tone that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The predecessor facility was activating systems that had been dormant for eons, and Marcus realized with growing amazement that the cavern was much larger than he had first thought. Sections of the floor began to descend, revealing additional levels that stretched deep into the planet's core. Ancient manufacturing bays came online, automated systems that began producing devices Marcus couldn't identify. Most surprising of all, a series of launch tubes opened in the cavern ceiling, revealing spacecraft that looked like they had been grown rather than built. "Impossible," breathed Keithnaros. "This isn't just a research station, it's a shipyard, a manufacturing center, perhaps even a military base." Marcus felt knowledge flowing from the necklace into his consciousness. The facility had multiple purposes, designed to serve as a resource center for whatever species eventually proved capable of accessing predecessor technology. But it also contained something else, something that made his blood run cold. "There's a weapon," he said, "hidden in the deepest levels. The predecessors called it the World Engine. It's capable of reshaping entire planets, moving them through space, even creating new solar systems." "A planet killer," Princess Zarathis whispered. "Or a planet creator," Marcus corrected. "The predecessors built it as a tool for colonization and terraforming, but in the wrong hand, the implications hung heavy in the air. If the Empress gained control of such a weapon, she could remake the galaxy according to her vision, eliminating any species that didn't fit into her hierarchical structure. She cannot be allowed to claim this facility," Keithnaros said firmly, "whatever the cost." Marcus made his decision. He accessed the facility's deepest systems, feeling the immense power that lay dormant in the planet's core. The World Engine was connected to everything, drawing energy from the star itself. If activated improperly, it could destroy not just Xerion Prime but the entire system. "I'm locking down the World Engine," he announced, "creating a quantum encryption that only someone with full predecessor authorization can break. Your mother can take this facility, but she won't be able to use its most dangerous systems." "And how do we prevent her from simply torturing the access codes out of you?" Princess Zarathis asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "Because I'm not staying here to be captured." He gestured to the newly revealed spacecraft in the launch bays. "The predecessors built these ships for emergency evacuations. They're designed to be operated by anyone with the right neural compatibility. You're planning to escape to the Crown Archive, Cathanaros realized. To claim the full inheritance the predecessors left behind. Not claim it, Marcus corrected. Share it. The way it was always meant to be shared. The sound of the Empress's forces breaching the outer defenses echoed through the cavern. Energy weapons carved through ancient crystal, and the defensive barriers flickered under the assault. They had minutes at most before Imperial troops reached their location. Princess Zarathis looked between Marcus and the approaching destruction of everything she had known. Her skin pattern settled into determined silver and blue. "I'm coming. With you," she announced. "Someone needs to witness what you find at the Crown Archive, and to help you convince the other species that cooperation is possible." "Your Highness, that would be treason of the highest order," one of the Tiar. The predecessor ship slipped through hyperspace like a whisper through the void. Marcus sat in the pilot's chair that had molded itself to his body, watching streams of data flow across displays that seemed to exist in the air itself. The vessels, artificial intelligence spoke to him not through words but through direct understanding, sharing navigation data and system status through the necklace that pulsed against his chest. 3 days had passed since their escape from Xerion Prime, and Marcus had spent every moment learning about the ship's incredible capabilities. It could travel faster than any vessel in the current galaxy, hide from all known detection methods, and repair itself from the most basic materials. But most importantly, it was carrying them toward the Crown Archive, where the complete knowledge of the predecessors waited. Princess Zarathis stood beside him, her patterns showing the deep blues and purples that indicated concern. She had been monitoring communications from the Vaelthari Empire, and the news was troubling. "The Empress has declared martial law across 17 systems," she reported. "She claims that Earth represents an existential threat to galactic peace, and has authorized a full military response." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "How long until the fleet reaches Sol system?" 2 weeks, perhaps less. She's mobilizing every warship in the Imperial Navy, plus auxiliary forces from the tributary species. It will be the largest fleet assembled since the Vaelthari first conquered this region of space. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Marcus's shoulders. Millions of lives hung in the balance, and he was racing toward an archive that might not even contain the answers they needed. But even as doubt crept in, the necklace pulsed with warm reassurance, and he felt the presence of something vast and ancient offering its support. "There," Princess Zarathis said suddenly, pointing to the navigation display. "The system is just ahead. I don't understand how it remained hidden for so long." Marcus studied the readings and felt amazement wash over him. The star system existed in a fold of space-time that kept it invisible to normal sensors. Only someone with access to predecessor navigation data could even locate it, much less reach it safely. As their ship dropped out of hyperspace, the full scope of what lay ahead took their breath away. The Crown Archive wasn't built on a planet. It was the planet, an entire world reshaped by predecessor engineering into a massive library and research center. Crystalline structures stretched from pole to pole, and the planet's surface glowed with gentle light that seemed to come from within the very rock itself. Orbital platforms drifted in perfect patterns around the world, each one containing additional archives and research facilities. "This is what they left for us," Marcus whispered. "All the knowledge of a civilization that spanned the galaxy for millions of years." Their ship guided itself to a docking platform that extended from the planet's surface to welcome them. As they disembarked, Marcus felt the same sensation he had experienced in the cavern on Xerion Prime, but magnified 1,000-fold. Every system in the archive was responding to his presence, ancient mechanisms awakening after eons of patient waiting. The entrance hall stretched beyond the horizon, its walls covered with displays showing the history of countless civilizations. Marcus saw species he recognized from current galactic records, but also thousands of others that had risen and fallen during the predecessor's long reign. Some had achieved great heights of technology and culture. Others had destroyed themselves through war or environmental collapse. But all had contributed something to the vast tapestry of knowledge stored here. "Welcome, inheritor," a voice said. Though no speaker was visible, the words seemed to come from the archive itself. "We have waited long for one capable of receiving Our final gift. Marcus stepped forward, the necklace blazing with light. I'm honored to be here, but I need your help. My species and many others are in danger. The knowledge you've preserved needs to be shared, not hoarded by any single civilization. You understand correctly, the voice replied. Come, let us show you what we have prepared. They walked deeper into the archive, passing through halls, filled with artifacts from across the galaxy. Marcus saw weapons that could crack moons, healing devices that could restore life to the dying, and star charts showing regions of space that current civilizations had never explored. But it was the final chamber that truly awed him. The heart of the archive was a vast spherical room with a single pedestal at its center. Floating above the pedestal was a crystal similar to the necklace Marcus wore, but thousands of times larger, and infinitely more complex. As he approached, he realized what he was looking at. The crown of stars, Princess Zarathis breathed. The master control for all predecessor technology. Not control, the archive corrected gently. Guidance. The crown does not command. It teaches. It shows what is possible when species work together, instead of competing for dominance. Marcus reached toward the crystal, and the moment his fingers made contact, the universe exploded into his consciousness. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations across millions of years. He felt the joy of species making first contact and working together to solve problems neither could handle alone. He experienced the bitter sorrow of wars that destroyed entire star systems, and the hope that came from rebuilding in cooperation rather than conquest. But most importantly, he understood the test the predecessors had designed. The crown of stars couldn't be claimed by force or stolen through cunning. It responded only to those who truly understood that knowledge belonged to all thinking beings, and that the greatest achievements came from diversity working in harmony. The Empress approaches, Princess Zarathis said urgently. My mother has tracked us here. She brings the full might of the Imperial fleet. Through the archive sensors, Marcus could see the Vailthari armada dropping out of hyperspace around the hidden system. Hundreds of warships took positions around the crown, archived their weapons trained on the ancient world. At the center of the formation flew the Empress's flagship, a massive vessel that could have conquered entire systems on its own. Princess Zarathis, the Empress's voice echoed through the archive's communication systems. You have allied yourself with enemies of our people and committed treason against the Empire. Surrender the human, and you will be permitted to return home for judgment. Refuse, and this archive and everything in it will be destroyed. Marcus felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The archive contained knowledge that could transform the galaxy, technologies that could end hunger, disease, and war across thousands of worlds. But it also contained weapons that could destroy entire civilizations if used wrongly. There is another way, the archive said quietly. But it requires trust and the willingness to risk everything on the hope that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Show me, Marcus said. The crown of stars pulsed, and suddenly Marcus was connected not just to the archive, but to every predecessor installation that had awakened across the galaxy. He felt the presence of humans on Earth who had found and activated ancient facilities. He sensed members of other species who had proven capable of interfacing with predecessor technology. Scientists, explorers, philosophers, and dreamers from dozens of civilizations, all connected through the quantum network the ancients had left behind. We don't have to fight the Empress, Marcus realized. We can show her what the predecessors really intended. He reached deeper into the crown systems and activated the archive's primary teaching protocol. Across the galaxy, every awakened predecessor facility began broadcasting the same message, not in words or images, but in pure understanding that transcended language and cultural barriers. The message was simple. The predecessors had not chosen successors. They had chosen teachers, species that would help others grow and develop, sharing knowledge freely and working together to explore the infinite possibilities of the universe. On Earth, Marcus felt his own people's amazement as ancient lunar facilities revealed themselves, offering technologies that could solve humanity's energy and environmental problems overnight. On 100 other worlds, species that had been enemies for generations suddenly saw possibilities for cooperation they had never imagined. But the most important response came from the Valthari fleet surrounding the archive. Through the quantum link, Marcus felt the consciousness of every being aboard those ships. Soldiers, officers, engineers, and even the Empress herself were experiencing the true history of their galaxy, seeing how cooperation had built wonders that conquest alone could never achieve. "This is impossible," the Empress's voice came again, but now it carried wonder instead of anger. "The records, the achievements we never knew existed. Species working together to build technologies beyond our greatest dreams." "Mother," Princess Zarathis spoke into the communication system. "This is what the human tried to tell us. The predecessors didn't want rulers, they wanted partners." The silence that followed stretched for long minutes. Marcus could feel the internal struggle taking place aboard the Imperial flagship, as the Empress grappled with revelations that challenged everything she had believed about her people's destiny. Finally, her voice came again, changed and humbled. "Captain Chen of Earth, I would speak with you, not as—" Captain Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform for the 10th time as the shuttle approached Zarian Prime. Through the viewport, the alien world gleamed like a massive jewel against the star field. Crystalline spires stretched impossibly, high into the pink atmosphere, and floating platforms drifted between them like glittering clouds. After 3 years of long-distance communication, humanity was finally meeting the Valthari Empire face to face. "Remember, Captain," Ambassador Williams said from the seat beside him, "these beings have technology we can barely understand. Their civilization is over 10,000 years old. We're the newcomers here, so we follow their protocols exactly." Marcus nodded, though something in his gut told him this wouldn't be a simple diplomatic meeting. The Valthari messages had been polite but cold, filled with subtle suggestions that humans were a primitive species barely worth their attention. Still, they had agreed to this meeting, which meant they wanted something from Earth. The shuttle docked at a platform that seemed to be made of living crystal. As they stepped out, Marcus felt the artificial gravity adjust to match their human needs. Everything around them hummed with quiet energy, from the walls to the very air itself. Their Valthari escort waited for them, a tall, elegant being whose skin looked like polished gemstone. The alien's face was difficult to read, but Marcus sensed barely hidden disdain. "Welcome to Zarian Prime," the escort said in perfect English, though his voice carried a musical quality that made the words sound like a song. "I am Coordinator Veltar. The Empress awaits your presence in the Grand Hall. You will follow protocol exactly as instructed." They walked through corridors that defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved and flowed like water, yet remained solid crystal. Light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, casting no shadows. Marcus noticed that every Valthari they passed wore different colored crystals embedded in their foreheads, apparently indicating their rank or function in society. The Grand Hall took Marcus's breath away. It was a vast space that seemed to extend infinitely upward, with crystalline formations growing from floor to ceiling like a frozen forest. Hundreds of Valthari filled the chamber, all wearing elaborate robes that sparkled with embedded gems. At the far end, on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single massive diamond, sat the Empress. Empress Kithara was ancient even by Valthari standards, her crystalline skin showing veins of deep purple and gold. The crown on her head pulsed with its own inner light, and her eyes held the weight of centuries. When she spoke, her voice carried throughout the hall without any visible amplification. "So these are the humans," she said, and Marcus heard amusement mixed with disappointment in her tone. "How very ordinary they appear. Ambassador Williams of Earth, approach and present your credentials." The formal ceremony proceeded exactly as they had rehearsed. Ambassador Williams presented gifts from Earth, spoke the prepared words of friendship, and outlined humanity's hopes for peaceful cooperation. The Empress listened with the patience of someone who had heard similar speeches countless times before. Marcus stood at attention behind the ambassador, trying to observe everything while maintaining proper diplomatic posture. It was during the gift presentation that he first noticed Princess Zarathis. She stood among the other royal family members, but, unlike their still, formal poses, she seemed restless. Her skin showed patterns of silver and blue that shifted like flowing water, and her eyes kept moving around the hall as if she was looking for something more interesting than the diplomatic ceremony. When her gaze fell on Marcus, he felt a strange jolt of recognition, though they had never met before. The formal speeches continued for what felt like hours. The Empress spoke of the Vaeltari Empire's great achievements, their advanced technology, and their responsibility to guide younger civilizations. Ambassador Williams responded with humanity's eagerness to learn and contribute to galactic peace. Marcus found himself studying the incredible technology around them, wondering how beings could create such wonders. "Your species shows potential," the Empress finally said when the ceremonies were concluding. "Though you are young and lack the refinement of older civilizations, we are willing to consider limited technological exchange. Coordinator Veltar will discuss specific arrangements with your delegation." As the formal gathering began to disperse, Marcus expected to follow the ambassador to whatever meeting rooms had been prepared for detailed negotiations. Instead, he found Princess Zarathis approaching him directly. The other Veltharian. The hall noticed immediately, and conversation stopped as they watched this breach of protocol. "Captain Chen," she said, her voice carrying that same musical quality but somehow warmer than the others. "I would speak with you privately." Marcus glanced at Ambassador Williams, who looked as surprised as he felt. Protocol demanded that all contact go through official channels, but refusing a direct request from a royal family member could be seen as an insult. "Your Highness," Marcus said, offering what he hoped was an appropriate bow. "I would be honored." She led him to a smaller alcove off the main hall, a space filled with growing crystal formations that provided privacy from the watching crowd. Up close, Marcus could see that her skin held depths, like looking into clear water, and the silver patterns that moved across her features seemed to respond to her emotions. "You are not what I expected," she said, studying his face with intense curiosity. "When we first received your transmissions from Earth, I wondered about your species. You seem so different from the others we have encountered." "Different how?" "Your Highness? Most species that achieve spaceflight develop along predictable paths. They become rigid, hierarchical, focused on order and control. But your messages spoke of chaos and creativity, of millions of different cultures and ideas all existing together on one world. It seemed impossible." Marcus smiled. "Earth can be chaotic, that's true, but we've learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." Princess Zarathis reached into her robes and withdrew something that made Marcus's breath catch. It was a necklace unlike anything he had ever seen, made of what looked like crystallized starlight. The pendant was roughly the size of his palm, with geometric patterns cut into its surface that seemed to shift and move when he looked at them directly. "This has been in my family for generations beyond counting," she said. "It was found in the ruins of the predecessors, the ancient race that once ruled this galaxy. My ancestors have tried for millennia to unlock its secrets, but it remains dormant. I want you to have it." "Your Highness, I couldn't possibly accept something so valuable, and surely there are protocols about gifts between our species." "There are many protocols," she said with a smile that suggested she didn't care much for most of them. "But sometimes protocols must be set aside for more important things. Please take it. I have a feeling it belongs with you." Marcus hesitated, but something in her expression convinced him this was more than a simple gesture of friendship. He reached out and gently took the necklace from her hands. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, the pendant exploded with brilliant light. The illumination was so sudden and intense that Marcus almost dropped the necklace. The light seemed to come from deep within the crystal itself, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. But more than that, he felt a strange sensation, as if something long dormant was awakening not just in the necklace, but in him as well. The light was visible throughout the grand hall. Conversation stopped entirely as hundreds of Vaeltari turned to stare at the glowing pendant in Marcus's hands. He heard gasps, exclamations in the Vaeltari language, and then a silence so complete he could hear his own breathing. Princess Zarathis stared at him with an expression of wonder and something that looked like fear. "Impossible," she whispered, but her voice carried in the sudden quiet. "You're not supposed to exist." From the throne, Empress Cathera's voice rang out sharp and commanding. Princess Zarathis, step away from the human immediately. Guards, escort our guests to their quarters. This audience is concluded. As Vialthari guards approached, Marcus looked down at the still glowing necklace in his hands, then back at Princess Zarathis. Her silver and blue patterns were swirling rapidly across her skin, and her eyes held a mixture of excitement and terror that he didn't understand. What just happened? He asked quietly as the guards reached them. Something that changes everything, she replied just before they were separated. Marcus found himself being escorted through the crystal corridors, the necklace still glowing softly in his grasp. Whatever had just occurred, he knew their simple diplomatic mission had become something far more complicated. And from the way the Vialthari were looking at him, he suspected his life had just become very dangerous indeed.